Hi, my name's Jenny Martin and I'm part of the 14th cohort of the Data School at the Information Lab, and I'm also one of the Doctor Preppers for Prepping Data, where we will be taking our example data from today. And today we're going to be talking about how to group data in Tableau Prep. Now you'll generally need this for string fields, where maybe you've got some manual data entry going on and people are spelling words wrong. It's really useful in those kinds of scenarios. So let's take a look at the challenge that we're going to be taking our data from today. It's Prepping Data 2019 Week 2. I'll leave a link in the description for you. And we've got city data for Edinburgh and London, but our city names are actually quite a mess, really. So let's just first of all talk about how you could sort of manually go about grouping. So if we highlighted these values that we know to be Edinburgh, we can either hit the group values at the top button here, or we could right click and group those values as such. And you will see that it has put a paperclip next to the name and it's asking us to name this group. It's kind of just selected one of the values in that group and asks and says, hey, do you want this one as the name? I'm not sure, whereas we know we'd want it to be spelled like this. So that's how we would manually go about it. But that's not very dynamic. There must be a better way. And to be fair, there is. So in our city field, we can go to the three dots there and we can use group values, the third option down, and we have a couple of options here. So we've got that manual selection that we kind of just demonstrated, but it's slightly different in this interface. So I can hold down my control key again, and I can select all of those Edinburgh values and group those together. And the first difference that you'll notice is that it's chosen the value with the most frequently occurring value. So it's recognised that Edinburgh, the correct spelling of Edinburgh, is probably what we want to be using as our group name. So that's, straight away an improvement on just manually selecting them without going through the three dots menu. So that's great. We have our first group there, but there's more options to explore. So let's go ahead and explore the next option in that menu. So we've got our pronunciation option. That's kind of just looking at the pronunciation of a word in English and grouping values based on that. So if we take a look in our Edinburgh, then we can see that because all of these start with an ED, they're quite a similar pronunciation. So it's able to start grouping those together. And we can control the sensitivity of this grouping. So we can increase it, and in this case, it's never going to be sort of lenient enough to allow in a 3 at the beginning to group up with Edinburgh. But we can also, in this instance, just select the 3 to be part of this Edinburgh group, and it will be absorbed into there as well. Similarly, we could do the same with the London one, where we can see this value down here that we could select into the London group. So that's kind of a bit of a combination of the pronunciation and manual selection to get to the result that we want. But surely there must be a way. There must be one where we can, group it with just one of these options. Let's keep trying. So we've got the common characters. Now, what do common characters do? I saw that there's an option for spelling as well. Surely that's kind of the same thing. Not quite. So let's click on the London value here. Now we can see that the values that have been included in the London group all have the letters L, N, D, and O, and only those letters. So why isn't the London with an I included? Because there's an I. So it's only ever going to include those who have the common characters. It doesn't matter how many of those characters they have, they can only come from those set values. So that's how that's working for us. So again, not the most efficient one. We've still got a lot outstanding. So let's go ahead and choose our final version, our final option here, which is the spelling. So there's actually quite a lot of complex algorithm going on in the background here to kind of know what common misspells might be, where you might have accidentally hit a different key on your keyboard. I'm not sure on the details of that, but Jonathan Allenby has written a great blog that I will link to in the description as well, which kind of goes into a little bit of more detail about this grouping by spelling and all the other grouping types too. So I suggest if you're looking for an accompanying blog, you check that out. So you can see that already it's picked up the majority of those words, except for where we've got the N at the front and the L at the end for London. So already the spelling option is looking like our best bet. So if we increase our grouping option here, then maybe that London will get sucked in and grouped together, and it has. So that's awesome. The spelling one has been the best for us in this instance. But kind of, I hear you asking what happens going forwards. What if people spell it in another different way? So I can add, say people spell it London, then I can add that value to my group. And you can see it's got a red dot next to it saying the value is not present in the data set. But that's not an issue because it just knows that if in the future there is a value in the data set that has this spelling, it will go into that group. So that's a way of future-proofing the workflow as well. So another thing that can be useful when you're particularly working with sort of city names is to use the geographic city. And that kind of, if it's not a city, so if I hadn't done this grouping replacing, I'd get an exclamation mark next to the name so you can check that you're just capturing all of those cities. But that's probably more detail on that in another video. So thank you very much for watching. Please do subscribe to this channel. Check out our previous video on cleaning strings, and coming up next is how to split fields in Tableau Prep. So thank you for watching.